In a world full of distractions, there is one big question on every dog owner's lips.
How do I become more than just the person holding the other end of the leash?
We all get dogs with a dream in mind, a vision of the future. And if right now your everyday reality isn't quite that picture you had in mind, you are in the right place.
It really doesn't have to be this way.
You absolutely can and will be more to your dog than just the person who gets in between them and the world.
The key is you need to be more sexy.
More sexy than the neighbourhood cat.
More sexy than the jogger in the park.
More sexy than that half-eaten hamburger they just found on the floor.
And yes, even more sexy than the dog across the road.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Lauren.
Together we're Absolute Dogs.
And you're listening to the Sexier Than a Squirrel podcast.
Welcome to this episode of the Sexier Than a Squirrel podcast, the podcast that teaches you how to transform your dog owning struggles through games.
So today we have a really common struggle and at the same time, Tom, one that is painful when it happens. And we have Donna and she's talking about her little dog Barney. Now he's 11 months old, wasn't that interested in balls, and then suddenly became very, very obsessed with balls. And actually, Donna's actually had to ban them on a walk. His daycare has banned him from having balls and playing fetch because he's being a real hooligan. And he basically is hoarding every ball he can find. And most probably excruciatingly painful for his owner, Donna, he will steal anyone else's ball, which is pretty much every day. It's embarrassing for Donna, and she feels that she needs our help.
Okay, so there are a few concepts at play here that if we can work on those, you will find that actually just being in the presence of a ball is not quite so, not such a scary prospect for you. So first things first, some dogs, they learn that in the presence of a tennis ball or any kind of ball, all they can think about is that ball and having it in their mouth and racing around with it and retrieving it. And it represents effectively a lack of flexibility in that they can't see another way to behave around that object. Now, the cool thing is we can actually work on flexibility. And so what we get you doing, Donna, is first of all, start with a different object. Start with maybe, I don't know, a book or a stool or something. And what you're going to do is you're going to train him, teach him many different ways to interact with this object. So it might be, for example, front feet on. It might be back feet on.
It might be one front foot on or one back foot on.
It might be. Now that we've worked on those things, can you just be around the object and not interact with it?
Can you maybe lie down near the object? Can you maybe do a left spin or a right spin next to the object without actually putting your feet on the object?
Yeah. Now, you think about what this means in terms of your struggle. Well, it makes sense that what we want him to be is a normal dog around a tennis ball. And so what you can then start to do as we layer in the other concepts and where this eventually goes is, okay, can there be a tennis ball in the room and you're able to make choices and do particular behaviors or play some of the Absolute Dogs games in the presence of the ball that does not involve the ball? That's going to be a key step for you.
Now, another game and concept that I would address, I suppose, for me is arousal up, arousal down. And actually, would I be able to I personally would still use balls with my dog. And what I would do is I would actually see if he can do some basic behaviours before he ever gets the ball. So effectively also disengaging from it and engaging from it and re-engaging to it, rather. So for me, something like sit, down, stand, middle, left, right, any of the behaviours that he already knows. Now, for my dogs, they're much more likely to know a spin or an instant down because those are things I use in everyday life. So those are the ones I would go with. I'd go to my strongest behaviours and I would see actually can he even think about basic sort of cues. Now, that would be for me with the ball in my hand. I wouldn't put the ball down. I wouldn't have the ball on the floor. I wouldn't have the ball in his presence. I wouldn't have him having free access to the ball. This would be simply with me working on actually, can you control yourself? Can you think around these things? And actually, one of the main reasons I personally don't remove it completely is I kind of like to work with the real thing. Like we're working with real pulse, right?
Yeah.
And I like to work with that because I think that's when you're going to get your best long-term results. But at the same time, I'm not trying to value build on the ball. What I'm trying to do is make sure that I've got a level of impulse control and thoughtfulness around that ball.
Yeah, absolutely. And leading on from that, you could work on disengagement from tennis balls specifically. And you could utilize one of the games that we taught you in the Sexier Than a Squirrel challenge. Now, if you haven't yet done the Sexier Than a Squirrel challenge, what are you waiting for? It's your next step. You need to do it.
It's got over 70% off right now.
Yep, and it's just £27 or $32 for over 25 days of teaching a new game each day. And you can find out more about that by heading to absolutedogs.me/sexy. Now, one of the games that we teach in that challenge is called Plant Pot Prison. And what Plant Pot Prison says is, okay, we're going to put some value under the plant pot. And we literally use like a terracotta plant pot.
And I think Barney does sound like a strong dog, so you might need to have some gloves on and be braced and ready with your plant pot and being ready to hold it.
Yeah. And what we do is we teach our dogs that, there's something valuable under there, whether it be food or whether it be a tennis ball. But I'd start this game with food for Barney to start with. And what we teach them is to control themselves around it, to the point where when you've played the stages of that game that we show you in the challenge, you can actually walk away from this very distracting, very exciting pot, and your dog will follow you so that you can then reward them by racing them back to it and having fun with them. So really what it does is it makes you more part of the game. And I think when our dogs are distracted by things, no matter what it is, we can very quickly go into trying to almost peel them away from the distraction. Whereas actually what we want to do is almost explore the world and be part of the distraction together where that is possible. And the cool thing is that it is possible with a tennis ball. So that would be the next layer that we'd add in.
Something else I'd really consider, and not so much a concept or a training game, but actually something I'd really consider is allowing Barney rehearsal of anything you don't want. So personally, I wouldn't allow him to have the opportunity to steal anyone else's ball, whether that means I don't walk him in those spaces, whether it means he's on lead, whether it means I walk in places where I'm not likely to see a ball. So for me, I've never yet seen anyone throwing a ball along our bridle path because it's not really a place to throw a ball. It's too narrow and there's not really any opportunity. And a dog would probably hurt itself if they were chasing a ball. So I'd consider where I was walking. I'd consider how I was walking, and I'd consider the purpose of my walk and the purposefulness of what I'd had planned as to whether actually it was the right thing for him right now. But most of all, I would not allow him to be able to steal anyone else's ball. And I'll be honest, I would consider whether daycare is the right space for him as well. And I know you're sitting here thinking, dear Lord, she's taking away things. We're taking away maybe to then be able to re-add them with purpose later on. So actually consider how full his bucket is. Actually, it sounds like a dog with quite a full bucket and a lot to think about. And I might give him a little bit less to think about. Let's consider it as a bucket holiday. Right, Tom, I don't know if you want to go into that a little bit more, but I think for me, every time he rehearses this is getting stronger and stronger. And you know the dog that wants other people's toys way more than they want their own. I feel like this is being grown in the wrong direction here.
Yeah, absolutely. And the challenge is that just as he's showing maybe a lack of flexibility, a lack of ability to think in arousal, a lack of disengagement here, what you'll start to see is those struggles, they'll pop up in different scenarios. And so what we want you to see this as is an amazing opportunity to work on these things that are really going to benefit Barney anyway in a variety of situations. And the cool thing is that Barney said, you know what? His flavor of distraction is something that you can easily have in your hand and that is not living. And therefore, you've got the opportunity to really work on this.
Well, so many people would kill for this one, right?
Yeah.
Like if I had a ball-obsessed dog, I'm quite happy. Yeah. Like for Tom and I, this is quite a cool thing. Whereas you get like a scent-obsessed dog or a pony-obsessed dog or a sheep-obsessed dog or a squirrel-obsessed dog.
Different games and different strategies.
And you know what? They're all like obsessions that we see or dogs that really find value in them that we see. They're all things we can work with. They're all things that we can, and I think the ball one actually is quite a cool one.
Yeah.
Right, it's a cool one.
So get excited because this is such a cool opportunity to teach him some valuable life skills.
And massively consider if he is somewhere like the daycare, actually what is he doing? How is he doing it? Is it growing him in the direction you want to grow him in? Actually, is it not? What's he up to when he's there, I think, Tom, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the final thing that we've got to add in there is are there any other scenarios in his life where he is maybe practicing lack of flexibility, where he's maybe practicing lack of thinking in excitement, where he's maybe practicing a lack of disengagement, and that could be a impulse control when you're not there,
right? Like lack of impulse control, just taking things when he wants them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it could be a daycare when you're not there, so you don't know, and therefore it'd be worth finding out.
Maybe you've got a dog walker that comes in, or maybe you've got someone that comes in and throws balls for him. I love that you've said on here, do I need to throw 500 balls for him a day? No, and neither does your dog walker, your dog boarder, your home boarder, your daycare. Actually, it is possibly, or it's very possibly happening at some other point in his day.
And equally, it could be a scenario totally separate from tennis balls. So, for example, when he sees the lead as if he's going for a walk, can he, do anything other than get excited and go lights on, no one's home? Can he maybe do middle? Can he do sit? How about if you walk towards the door and you open the door? Can he only think about going through it? Or actually, can he maybe do some of the games or behaviors and tricks that you've taught him? All of these areas and situations are an opportunity to work on what you want to work on, and yet you get to work on them in a variety of different ways, which always works better.
So most of all, Donna, I think there are lots of strategies there for you, and his struggle is actually other people's strengths. They really want this. So massive pat on the back for recognizing where you are. Massive sort of, you're not alone. You're absolutely not alone. You are absolutely in good company, and you found your home here. You found your team. Please play all of the games from Sexy Than a Squirrel that are appropriate to you and to Barney. He sounds like a super cool dude. We'd love to see a photo of him. And if you own a dog like Barney and you can relate to any of this, please introduce yourself in the groups. Please tell us a little bit about you and your dog. We love to hear about your real life struggles. Absolutely post us your questions, post us your anything that you would like us to do a future podcast on, because these struggles are for us real life scenarios, and are things that we know can be made much more pleasurable with just a tiny bit of adaptation.
Absolutely. So with that, guys, that was this episode of the Sexier Than a Squirrel podcast. We tackled a game changer struggle. We'll see you in the next episode. Remember, stay sexy. Hey, before you go, have you taken part in the worldwide Sexier Than a Squirrel challenge?
It's a 25-day online video program, huge energy, amazing community, and over 6,000 people are already taking part.
The only question is, you know where you are today. Where do you want to be 25 days from now? Head to absolutedogs.me/sexy.